I was working the front desk at a hostel in Sydney when this American guy walked up to me, suitcase in hand, sweat dripping down his face. He looked frustrated. Really frustrated. He said, "I've been walking for 2 hours. Why is everything so far apart here?" I looked at him, confused. Sydney's inner city is pretty walkable. I asked where he was trying to go. He pulled out his phone and showed me Google Maps. He'd zoomed out so far that the scale showed him Sydney was only 3 inches from Melbourne on his screen. He thought he could walk between cities in an afternoon. Melbourne is 900 kilometers away. That's a 9-hour drive. I didn't know whether to laugh or book him a geography tutor. I've got hundreds of these stories, and I break down a new batch of cultural chaos every week. The people who subscribe, they're the ones who know the difference between laughing at tourists and understanding why these collisions actually happen. If that's your speed, you know what to do. Another American asked me at the same hostel if we had normal coffee because he didn't understand what a flat white was. I explained it's espresso with steamed milk. He said, "So basically a latte?" "Close enough," I said. He ordered one. When it came in a ceramic cup instead of a paper cup with his name on it, he looked genuinely offended. He asked if we could put it in a to-go cup, because that's how coffee works. I told him we don't really do that here unless you're actually taking it to go. He sat down at a table, visibly annoyed, drinking his flat white like it personally insulted him. Then there was the woman at Bondi Beach who asked a lifeguard if the ocean was safe. Reasonable question, right? Except she followed it up with, do you guys have, security cameras in the water to watch for sharks? The lifeguard just stared at her. He said, "Ma'am, it's the ocean. We have flags, we have patrols, but we don't have underwater surveillance." She wasn't satisfied. She wanted to know why Australia, a developed country, didn't have better shark detection technology. The lifeguard told her if she was that worried, she could stay on the sand. She did, for 3 days. Never went in the water once. My favorite was the guy at a cafe in Melbourne who got mad because we didn't have free refills. He'd ordered a long black, drank it in 2 minutes, then walked back up to the counter with his empty cup. He just stood there, holding it out like he was expecting me to fill it up again. I said, "Did you want another one?" He said, "Yeah, obviously. Where's the coffee station?" I told him we don't have self-serve coffee here. He'd have to order and pay for another one. He could not believe it. He went on this whole rant about how, in America, coffee refills are free, and how Australia is behind the times. I told him coffee here costs more because it's actually good. He left a 1-star review on Google, said we were greedy and anti-customer. The review's still up. We framed it. I had a friend working at Sydney Airport in customs. She told me about this couple from Texas who arrived with 2 massive suitcases full of food, truly packed. Beef jerky, dried fruit, nuts, granola bars, instant mac and cheese, peanut butter, you name it. When customs asked them to open the bags, the guy said, "We weren't sure if Australia had grocery stores." My friend just stood there. She said, "Sir, we have supermarkets. We have everything you have in America. You didn't need to bring your own food." The woman looked skeptical. She said, "But do you have good food?" My friend told them they'd have to dispose of most of it because of biosecurity laws. The guy got upset, said it was government overreach. They ended up throwing away about 40 kilograms of snacks. Cost them extra baggage fees, too. Another traveler asked my friend if Australians spoke English. Not as a genuine question about accents. He literally thought we spoke a different language. When she said yes, we speak English, he said, "Oh good, I was worried I'd have to use Google Translate the whole time." She asked him what language he thought we spoke. He said he wasn't sure. Maybe Australian. He wasn't joking. He seemed relieved when she explained that English is the main language here, though our slang might confuse him. He thanked her like she'd just saved his trip. Then there was the woman who asked if she needed a visa to go to New Zealand from Australia. Fair question on the surface. But when my friend said yes, You're traveling between two countries. She got defensive. She said, "But isn't New Zealand part of Australia? Like Hawaii is part of America?" My friend explained that no, New Zealand is a completely separate country with its own government. The woman didn't buy it. She said, "Well, they're right next to each other on the map." My friend told her they're actually over 2,000 kilometers apart. That's further than Los Angeles to Denver. The woman still seemed unconvinced, but stopped arguing. She booked a separate flight to Auckland and probably complained about it later. I worked at a car rental place in Cairns for a summer. American tourists were some of our most interesting customers. One guy asked if he needed an international driver's license. I told him if he had a valid U.S. license, he was fine, but he'd need to remember we drive on the left. He laughed. Said, "Yeah, I've seen the movies. How hard could it be?" 3 hours later, he called from the side of the road. He'd been driving on the right side out of habit, nearly hit 2 cars, and was too scared to keep going. We had to send someone to pick him up. He returned the car the same day and took buses for the rest of his trip. Another American asked if the car came with a GPS. I said yes. He asked if it used American satellites or Australian ones. I didn't even know how to answer that. I told him GPS is a global system. Works the same everywhere. He said, "Okay, but will it understand miles or just kilometers?" I explained the GPS would show kilometers because that's what we use here. But he could change the settings if he wanted. He asked why Australia didn't just use miles like normal countries. I reminded him most of the world uses kilometers. He wasn't impressed, said it was going to make driving confusing. I agreed, but probably not for the reasons he thought. A couple rented a car to drive from Brisbane to Sydney. Sounds fine, except they thought it'd take 3 or 4 hours. It's a 900-kilometer drive, at least 10 hours if you don't stop. I asked if they'd checked the route. They said, "Yeah, it doesn't look that far on the map." I pulled up the map for them and showed the scale. They were shocked. The guy said, "Everything's so spread out here." I told him Australia's about the same size as the mainland US. Distances here are real. They ended up splitting the drive over 2 days and called it the longest road trip they'd ever done. I didn't mention that Australians regularly drive twice that distance for holidays. One woman asked if we had charging stations for electric cars in the outback. I told her there are some, but they're limited. She seemed annoyed. She said, "How do people live out there without charging stations?" I explained that most people in remote areas don't drive electric cars yet. They use petrol. She said that seemed backwards and bad for the environment. I told her it's more about infrastructure and distance than choice. She didn't care. Left another review saying Australia was behind on green energy. She'd been in the country for less than 48 hours. I was waiting tables in a busy restaurant in the CBD when an American family came in for dinner. Everything seemed fine until the bill came. They looked at it, then looked at me, then back at the bill. The dad said, "Where do we add the tip?" I told him tipping isn't required here. We pay servers a livable wage. He seemed offended on my behalf. He said, "But how do you make money?" I explained my hourly rate. "It's decent. I don't rely on tips to survive." He insisted on leaving 20% anyway and made a big deal about it, like he was doing me this huge favor. I appreciated it, but it felt awkward. The whole table watched him count out the cash like he was making a statement. Another American got annoyed when I didn't immediately bring the bill after they finished eating. In Australia, we don't rush people out. You sit, relax, chat. The bill comes when you ask for it. But this guy flagged me down twice, getting progressively more irritated. Finally, he said, "Do you want us to leave or what? Just bring the check." I explained we're not trying to rush anyone. He said, "In America, the check comes right away, so you can leave when you're ready." I told him here, lingering is normal. He paid and left, muttering something about slow service. We got a 3-star review. He docked points for inefficiency. A woman at a cafe in Brisbane asked me if we had ranch dressing. We didn't. She asked what we did have for salad. I listed our options: balsamic vinaigrette, lemon olive oil, Caesar, aioli. She wrinkled her nose at all of them. She said, "Do you have anything normal?" I asked what she meant. She said, like ranch or Thousand Island, regular dressings. I told her those aren't really standard here. She ended up ordering the salad plain and complained the whole time that it was too healthy and boring. I watched her pick at it for 10 minutes before giving up. She left most of it untouched. Then there was the guy who tried to customize his burger to death. He wanted no tomato, extra pickles, swap the bun for gluten-free, add avocado, switch the sauce, cook the patty well done. The chef was annoyed, but did it. When the burger came out, he took one bite and said it was dry. Well, yeah, you ordered it well done and removed half the moisture-adding ingredients. He asked for a refund. We didn't give him one. He walked out saying he'd never come back. We were fine with that. I worked at a brunch spot in Sydney where we served Vegemite toast as an option. An American couple ordered it because they'd heard about it. When it came out, the guy spread it on thick like it was Nutella. I tried to warn him. I said, "Just so you know, you only need a tiny bit. It's really salty and strong." He waved me off, said, "I can handle it." He took a huge bite. His face went through about 5 stages of regret. He spat it into a napkin and said, "That's the worst thing I've ever tasted. How do you people eat this?" I told him again, "You use a thin layer with butter." He didn't listen. His wife tried it the same way and had the same reaction. They left the toast on the plate like it was radioactive, posted on Instagram later that Vegemite was a scam and inedible. We laughed about it for weeks. Another time, a guy ordered a meat pie at a pub. Classic Australian food. When it came out in a bowl with mash and peas, he looked confused. He said, "Where's the crust on the bottom?" I explained that's how we serve it here. The pie's already got a crust. He wasn't satisfied. He wanted a real pie like his grandma made. I told him this is a real pie, just a different style. He spent the whole meal poking at it suspiciously, eating around the edges like it might bite back. In the end, he admitted it wasn't bad, but still said American pot pies were better. "Sure, mate. Whatever helps you sleep." A woman asked me if the chicken she ordered was real chicken. I stared at her. I said, "As opposed to what?" She said, "I don't know. I heard some countries use weird substitutes." I assured her it was real chicken. Locally sourced, even. She seemed doubtful. Ate it anyway. No complaints. But the fact she asked still baffles me. I was helping an American tourist in a hardware store in Perth. He needed to buy a drill bit. I asked what size he needed. He said, 3/8 of an inch. I told him we use metric here. He'd need to convert it. He looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. He said, "Why don't you just stock normal sizes?" I explained that metric is normal for most of the world. He pulled out his phone to convert it, grumbling the whole time. Took him 10 minutes. He left saying the metric system was unnecessarily complicated. The irony was completely lost on him. Another guy came into a pharmacy asking for Tylenol. I told him we call it paracetamol here. Same drug, different name. He didn't believe me. He insisted Tylenol and paracetamol were different things. I showed him the box. Same active ingredient. He bought it but seemed suspicious, like I was trying to trick him into taking something else. I saw him Google it in the store. When he realized I was right, he didn't apologize, just walked out. A woman in a grocery store got frustrated because the milk was in the refrigerated section instead of the shelf-stable aisle. She said, "In America, we have milk that doesn't need refrigeration. Why is yours all cold?" I explained that most of our milk is fresh and needs to stay cold. We do have UHT milk, but it's less common. She said fresh milk goes bad too fast, and she didn't understand why we didn't just use the long-life stuff. I told her fresh milk tastes better. She disagreed, said American milk was fine. I didn't argue. She bought almond milk instead. Then there was the American who got annoyed at a pedestrian crossing because it didn't have a countdown timer. In Australia, most crossings just have a red or green light. You walk when it's green. Simple. But he wanted to know exactly how many seconds he had left. He said, "How am I supposed to know if I have time to cross?" I told him to look at the light. If it's green, cross. If it starts flashing red, don't start crossing. He said it was inefficient and poor urban planning. He missed 2 green lights while complaining about it. A couple asked me at a hotel if we had air conditioning. I said yes. They turned it on, then got confused because the thermostat was in Celsius. They asked me to switch it to Fahrenheit. I told them the system doesn't have that option. They'd have to convert it themselves or just adjust until it felt comfortable. The guy got frustrated. He said, "Why does everything here have to be different?" I reminded him that Celsius is standard in most of the world. He said, "Well, Fahrenheit makes more sense." I didn't engage. I just left them to figure it out. They called the front desk 3 times that night, asking if the AC was broken because the numbers seemed wrong. I worked at a servo in rural New South Wales. An American stopped to fill up his rental car. When he saw the price per liter, he freaked out. He said, "Gas is so expensive here." I explained it's per liter, not per gallon. When you convert it, it's not that different from US prices. He didn't want to hear it. Said Australia was ripping people off. I told him our minimum wage is also higher, so it balances out. He ignored that part. Just kept complaining about fuel prices for 5 minutes. Paid and drove off, still muttering about it. Another American asked me if Australians celebrate Thanksgiving. I said no, it's an American holiday. She seemed shocked. She said, "But don't you guys want to celebrate it? It's about being thankful." I told her we have our own holidays. She said, "Yeah, but Thanksgiving is universal." I explained that no, it's really not. It's specifically about American history. She didn't get it. Asked if we at least eat turkey in November. I said only if someone's really into American culture. She left looking confused, like she couldn't imagine a world without Thanksgiving. Most travel content just shows you the pretty beaches and the koalas. I document the cultural blind spots nobody talks about. The stuff that reveals how people actually think when their assumptions get challenged. This is what subscribers come here for. The stories other channels won't tell because they're too busy chasing algorithm-friendly thumbnails. A guy got mad at a post office because we didn't sell stamps in rolls like the US does. We sell them in booklets. He said it was inconvenient and wasteful. I told him it's just a different format. He wasn't happy. Said everything in Australia was just slightly off from how it should be. I asked him how it should be. He said, "Like America." I told him he was in Australia. He didn't appreciate the reminder. I was at a pub in Melbourne on Australia Day when an American tourist asked why everyone was so excited. I told him it's our national day. He said, "Oh, like the 4th of July?" "Close enough in concept," I said. Then he asked if we celebrate America on the 4th of July too. I stared at him. I said, "No, mate, that's your Independence Day. From Britain, we're not involved." He looked confused. He said, "But don't all countries celebrate the 4th of July a little bit? It's a pretty big deal." I told him it's only a big deal in America. He didn't believe me. He said, "I feel like I've seen fireworks in other countries on July 4th. I explained those were probably American expats or military bases, not the actual country celebrating. He still seemed doubtful. I bought him a beer and changed the subject. Sometimes it's not worth the effort. Another American asked me if Australia was part of the Commonwealth, like it was some kind of secret club. I said, "Yes, we are." He asked what that meant. I explained we recognize the British monarch as our head of state, but we govern ourselves. He said, "So you're not really independent?" I told him we're fully independent. The Commonwealth is more symbolic than anything. He said, "That sounds complicated." I agreed. It kind of is, but it works for us. He said he'd just tell people back home that Australia was basically independent, but also kind of British. Close enough, I guess. The funniest part of all these stories is that most of these tourists aren't trying to be difficult. They genuinely think the way things work in America is the way things work everywhere. It's not arrogance, really. It's just a lack of perspective. And when that perspective hits them in the face with kangaroos, Celsius, and no free refills, they don't know how to process it. Some adapt. Some complain. Most do a bit of both. I'll say this: Australians are pretty laid back. We'll laugh at the confusion, help you figure things out, and probably buy you a beer afterward. But if you come here expecting everything to work like it does back home, you're in for a rough time. Australia's not America, and honestly, we're pretty okay with that. And that's the thing. I don't just collect these stories for laughs. I decode why they happen, what they reveal about cultural blind spots, and how to actually navigate the world with your eyes open. That's what this channel does consistently. If you want that kind of clarity on tap, subscribe. Because trust me, these stories never stop coming, and neither does my analysis of them.